Before we start this podcast, I want to definitely remind you of a sponsor for Fresh of the Word, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest. In the world of wrestling, where there's hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads, don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. So if you'd like to discuss a possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or even Zubaz, then drop them a line at 20by20apparel.com. That's the number 20x, the number 20apparel.com. And also check out their enamel pin line. It's super cool.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. I tell I'm running out of breath, I tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh. Fresh, goddammit, we so damn fresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier, and this is episode 177. And the guest for this episode is Anastasia Lin, subject of the new documentary Badass Beauty Queen, The Story of Anastasia Lin. Lin is an award-winning actress, former Miss World Canada, and a human rights activist, and has appeared in over 20 films and television production. She often works at the confluence of activism and acting, playing roles that carry messages of freedom, human rights, and ethics. And also, as a model, she's made appearances on runways around the world, including the New York Fashion Week show at the prestigious Waldorf-Astoria. And what brings her on the podcast is about the documentary Badass Beauty Queen. Anastasia made headlines around the world when she stood up for religious freedom and brought attention to the issue of organ harvesting in her homeland of China during her campaign to be Miss World. However, she was labeled persona non grata in her homeland and denied entry to China to compete in the pageant final on the world stage. Anastasia has persisted in her request to speak on the issues that she believes in and has spoken in front of Congress and have been featured in publications as the New York Times and has appeared on CNN. And this documentary, The Badass Beauty Queen, sort of details this journey. And during our conversation, we talked about how she's used beauty pageants as her platform for activism and why she didn't quit after China started threatening her family back in China, how being an actress helps with her activism, her dealings with the Chinese government, the making of the documentary, and her future plans. So let's get on to the interview with Anastasia Lin. So I watched the Badass Beauty Queen documentary. It was the story of the persecution that you got in regards to speaking out, during these beauty contests that you were a part of. Why do you want to bring things out in this documentary about everything that you went through?
Yeah, like at the time when I first won Miss World Canada, I had a very vague idea about what the platform could possibly be, because I had I seen like one Miss World in the past that was a human rights activist, and she's done some quite successful job rescuing a girl from Iran from being executed. So I just thought, oh wow, so if that's the power of beauty pageant, that's something I can do immediately. That was like my 23-year-old self before I went into Miss World Canada for the first time. And I have made films about, I acted in films about the stories of victims of Chinese labor camp because of their freedom of speech or freedom of religion that's sort of been persecuted. So I just, at that time, it was very vague.
Yeah.
My idea about human rights was also very general, like many people in today's society, I'd say. Probably never really experienced immediate, invasion of human rights or even just personal things that are very common in the West. But over there, it's a totally different story. So I felt like I should do something about it. And most of the time, these victims from China, like Falun Gong practitioners or Tibetans or Uyghurs, some of their stories are really courageous. And the turmoil they went through are horrible, but they're so courageous. And they deserve to be heard. So I felt like I probably can do something with the beauty pageant. And people like to watch beauty pageants. It's entertaining. It's much easier than watching a human rights documentary. So that was my original idea going into doing beauty pageants. And also the glamour side of things is very attractive. But then after I won Miss World Canada, that's when things hit the fan. Because I ran on a human rights platform, so the Chinese government took it way more seriously than anybody else, even myself. And they thought that, oh, this girl is like a warrior that's about to launch this campaign against us. So they went into my father's, I don't know how they threatened him, but my father sent me a text message saying that the Chinese security, national security has came to him and said that if I don't stop talking, then my family will be persecuted like in the Cultural Revolution. So he was pleading me to give my family in China a way to survive. And then after that, it was just, I never really faced something like that. I've heard a lot of stories about how the Chinese, police or security agents from the National Security Bureau going to dissidents or overseas Chinese, their families in China, their homes, and to threaten those people or destroy their businesses. I heard a lot of stories like that. We hear some of them on the media, like New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, they all report on them. But the thing is, there are a lot more in real life. And usually people don't speak up about it because they don't want to endanger their families in China furthermore or their properties. So majority of the people keep silent. And when it happened to me, I was 25 at the time. I just won Miss World Canada. I was about to graduate university. I went to Toronto supposedly to study acting, and I went to University of Toronto. But most of my undergrad years I spent on film sets, so I took some time to finish on my undergrad. But I sadly didn't know that at the time. But anyways, back to Miss World. Then after I won, these media, some of them heard about how my father was threatened through my personal friends. One of my friends is a Canadian journalist, but I told him not to tell other people. But then he told someone else, and that journalist was really interested. And then he somehow convinced me that if I speak out about this threat that was against my father because I exercised my freedom of speech in Canada as a Canadian citizen, then it will probably provide more protection for my father in China. Because usually, without any media attention from the West or government attention, or Western government don't speak up about certain cases, the persecution in China gets worse. It doesn't get better.
Right.
So that's why when Washington Post invited me to write an op-ed about it, I did. And things just sort of went from there. And then at the time, 2 weeks after I was crowned Miss World Canada, the location of the final that year from Miss World was moved from Australia to China 2 weeks after I won. And I was like, oh, wow, so now I'm going into China myself. Right. I thought at the time. And at the same time, I received an invitation letter from U.S. Congress to invite me to testify about the situation my situation, also the situation of minorities, persecution in China. And I was like in this dilemma, and I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. And at that time, the film producers, they approached me. They were very interested in making, like, just following my story. No one knows where it was going to go at the time.
Right.
And it was a very fluid situation, but everybody is really excited except for me, because I really wanted to go to the final. And I think for the 25-year-old me, I didn't place human rights as this like one big super objective of my life. It was never like that. It was something I heard about, and I feel something should be done about it. I talked to the victims. I feel like it's really unjust. If I have a chance, I will talk about their story. But I was so young,
right.
and I know so little. And the depths of their pain, I felt it. That's why I was up to take some action. But I did not know the kind of pressure was so much for a 25-year-old to take. And then when it came closer to the final date in China, everybody's supposed to get a Chinese visa, invitation from the Chinese government in order to apply for a Chinese visa in order to go to China to participate in Miss World. But as Miss Canada, I never got an invitation letter from the government, and I discovered just asking other Miss World around the world, they all got their invitation letter, and it seems I was the only one that didn't get it.
Of course, yeah.
And so that's when I realized, wow, so they already sort of singled me out in this process, and if I don't speak now, like, they will just pretend that I don't exist. So, and then at the same time, the American media, especially the Washington Post, was really helping me to, they wrote an editorial about it, about how China is censoring a contestant of the international competition they're hosting. Yeah.
Being that you were so young, and then they're also, threatening your father, even though having editorials like the one with Washington Post to sort of bring attention to it, so that maybe, the persecution of your family would be less over there. Why did you still keep on going? For most people, they would have just maybe stopped or just tried to disappear, or would have just shut up at that point. Why did you feel like you needed to continue on?
Oh, the thought of disappearing continuously appeared in my mind throughout the last 4 years. So it's a constant self-examining process, I guess. Part of me feels like this is really not my fight. I mean, I was placed almost in that situation by like exterior force. When I was younger, I did not feel like that was my first choice of career, and I don't see human rights as a career. I think like it's a passion. It's almost like politics, I can say, because you are actually trying to change policy, be it in a dictatorial regime or a democracy. But still, like I didn't learn about like human rights. I was a political science and history and drama major, but I was a drama major first, and I'm an actress. And so I felt like this is outside my arena. But then there's also the victims, when they come to me and they tell me about what they had been through. And that kind of experience is it's not something that you can really ignore after you listen to them. And you see them standing in front of you with their pain, but still living on. And it's almost like it's just wrong. And it made me feel like I need to not fix it, but I need to make this hurt. Their story needs to be told. So that was almost like I don't care about the consequence. I'm just going to do this and see whatever is going to happen kind of drive inside me. So it's constantly conflicting, and it's still conflicting today when I want to live just like a normal North American. I live in New York right now, and it makes me actually feel better because the confrontation of the city itself is already very high. It actually makes me feel like my personal life is quite relaxed. But yeah, I guess what really made me going is I realized through this experience, even though I was put in a place that's extremely uncomfortable, and my family made huge sacrifices. To this day, my grandparents and my father cannot come out of China. My father's passport renewal is denied, so he doesn't even have a passport. My grandparents, their Hong Kong visa was taken away when they planned the trip to come to Hong Kong to see me, because I'm persona non grata in China. I can't even enter. And my family they can't see each other anymore. My mom can't visit her parents. She's Canadian. So, my family took so much. But at the same time, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned how resilient I could be if I find the strength inside me and if I want to. And I found that my family, they are also incredibly brave. I think only when you face trial or difficulties, you really see the quality of people. And that's just amazing. It's something that so beyond the current difficulties that we're facing. It's like a spirit of the human being that is like the essence. It's what's most precious about us. You know what I mean?
Right, definitely. Do you still are you still in contact with your father and your grandparents? And if so, what do they feel about everything that you're doing?
I cannot, I can't speak for them, but I feel like, first of all our phone conversations are monitored. They know that their phones are being listened to. The police visit their home, routinely. Make threats, make whatever, try to get them to persuade me and my mom, that kind of thing. And so we know that our conversations are not free and private. So, and they live in China, so they can't possibly express their true thoughts. But I know they're proud of me, and this, I could hear it. In the ways that we communicate, I know that they're proud of me. And not proud, you did something that sort of had some kind of impact, but more we always know what you are and we believe in you. It doesn't matter what you do or what you achieve or not achieve, kind of proudness. It's family, and it's very human, and it's very compassionate. And I feel just that is, that's what I can say.
Your background as being an actress, how does that help with the things that you do as an activist?
It's extremely helpful. I feel like if I'm not an actress, I wouldn't be able to do this, because acting is a self-examining process constantly, and it's sort of a process or imaginative exercise to put yourself in other people's shoes and really feel what, the human experience. And through that, I felt the victim's pain. One of my movies, The Bleeding Edge, I acted as a victim of human rights in China, and she went through tons of torture, electronic baton shocking the body, the head, the shoulder, gang rape, bamboo sticks stuck under fingernails, force feeding, inserting a tube through the nose all the way down to the stomach when they go on hunger strike just to force them to eat. These things happen in Chinese labor camp, and they're still happening today. And so, these people that I spoke to and interviewed for my role, some are Falun Gong practitioners. I also, talked to some Uyghur people. I had to learn their physicality, and I had to learn their psychology in that situation. And at the beginning, I sensed just all fear. This is crazy. I don't know why they would say, for some Falun Gong practitioner, I don't know why they would. Okay, do you know what Falun Gong is? I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I feel like
Go ahead.
Falun Gong is this Chinese Buddhist, Taoist-inspired yoga practice, and they have a spiritual side, which is basically Chinese traditional belief, blended into one. And so that's why after Cultural Revolution, when people don't really believe in anything anymore, this practice came out as a yoga. It's really just peaceful and good for your body, health. And so a lot of older grandmas, they practice it. But because it's rooted in Chinese philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, and so it's really inspiring too, to have one to be quiet down the outside noises and really listen to one's heart and figure out what you really truly want for yourself.
Right.
And so a lot of people, they really like it. But then it grew so big, it was like 70 million Chinese people practicing it by 1999. And the communists were just like, this is way too much. Too many people, and they don't believe in communism. So that's not good. And they just started persecution. And after the persecution started, a lot of them were thrown into jail. And they would go through this process of torture, basically to force them to sign a paper that says that they give up, they don't do it anymore, they don't practice anymore, and they are going to help to like sort of persuade other people to do it. So it's like this manipulating force process. And so a lot of people, they don't want to do that because they just don't believe in communism anymore. And so they die in like they are tortured to death in the middle of like trying to get them to do all these things by the police. Like they don't suicide. I mean, by they die, I mean like they're tortured to death.
Right.
So I spoke to a lot of people who survived that process, and they told me what they've been through. They lost family, they lost their jobs, they've been tortured. And I was just like, how can you do that? Why don't you just sign it? Like, I don't find the strength inside myself in that situation to just like do that. And then I find they told me that there's something that's really bigger than fear itself. And once they find that, it's almost like humanity. It's what's inside of you. It's the core.
Okay.
And you don't want to give that up anymore and live a fake, like a life that's like.
What I want to ask is whether it's the stuff that these people that you're interviewing for these roles that you're playing, or with, you know, all the stresses and all the things that you have to talk about through the activism, talking about your experiences. How do you personally sort of deal with the mental health aspect of that?
I think the Chinese Communist Party is really responsible for my therapist bills.
Right, yeah.
Like, not easy. Yeah, I went to therapist, and even with the trauma that, like, I personally, it's not even any kind of in-person intimidation, but this whole thing that I've been through in the last few years, like, I have PTSD from it, and even my friends, very close friends and family, realize that I sometimes have these kind of panic attacks that occasionally, like most of the time when something is good that's happening to me, for example, like a career or a job, and I would have this fear that good things will end right away and they just won't happen to me. That kind of negativity, and kind of believe that came from what I had been through, taking all that pressure onto myself. Because when that thing happened to my dad, like I felt so vulnerable because there's no one I can go to. Like, I can't call the Canadian police, right? They have no jurisdiction in China. I can't call the Chinese police because they're the one that's threatening my dad.
Yeah.
You literally had no one to go to.
And they all probably think you're crazy too.
Yeah, and like you can go to the media, and then they probably will do something, and you'll have to see what happened.
Right,
it's all
right.
in the unknown. And so, for me, I just carried this like huge uncertainty on my shoulder, and then also I felt like it was a responsibility for a very long time. And I feel like being an actress really helped me because I can channel it through my art. And also, I can also separate that part. I now learned to compartmentalize all that and just try to focus on the little details and things that I go through in the present in my life here in New York. And that helps tremendously. Cooking helps, be in touch with nature, and just smell the plants, the 5 senses to keep me here, right here in the present, and not think about the darkness really helps. Does that make any sense?
Oh,
Sorry.
definitely.
It's so abstract. Yeah, and
No.
I don't know. I like at one point I felt like this is not my life is ruined because I want to be an actress, and so many Hollywood studios nowadays are bought by China, and we hear a lot of stories about how Hollywood movies, they manipulate the script to kowtow to Chinese government. Like what is supposed to be like a Chinese communist as the villain in the movie, they changed to North Korean or someone else. And so there's so much money involved from China now here. And a lot of people, like, they worry for me that, oh, are you going to, like, not even have a career that's sort of uncensored here in the West? And I worry about that too. You see, the Chinese infiltration in the West is also really prominent. They're Confucius instituting many universities, and because they're funding, these universities sometimes cancel my film screening, or if I have like a debate in university, the Chinese Student Association, which have direct link with the consulate and the embassy of China, would like complain and make protests. And these are not like organic protests. They're organized and with a strategy and an aim to further the communists, their interests. So these things, they make me feel more defeated sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's something I didn't really think about, that for someone like you that is a part of the entertainment industry, that China does have such a stronghold in that industry over here, that your sort of, role with the way you're looked upon by the Chinese government will, definitely have an effect on what things you can do over here on the other side of the planet. That must be very frustrating.
Yeah, it is very frustrating. But there's also hope. Like, in the past, I always let that kind of darkness get me. And it's like, being an actress is hard enough to try to make it in the industry. Now, on top of that, you have all these, like, censorship and difficulty that might be really stopping me from having a career. But then I think of these victims, like, they've been through hell in China, and they describe this kind of endless darkness for them. It's like if communist regime is there and not gone, then their darkness will continue, even if they're released from labor camp. And I heard this from a victim who told me that even if you're released from labor camp, you don't feel really happy because you know you're going to come back again. And you know that as long as the persecution doesn't end, you're going to come back here again and again and again until, like, one day you don't survive the torture and you die. And it's like, wow, so what is there to live for? Right. And I felt like that a little bit, like, not to that level, but just like, my dream is to be a successful actress. And my craft is everything to me. It gives me, like, the life energy that really fulfills my soul. And if I cannot do that because of foreign government, that's actually nothing to do with my life, really, except for they hate me and hate my family. Like, is my dream gonna be destroyed because of that? But then I think, no, I don't think evil has the final word. I think in many times in history, and I read this a lot in literature too, that it's not a miracle that happened, it's that human determination sometimes lead to miraculous things that happen.
Right.
And if you keep going and you don't think about the darkness, you don't think about it, you will attract good things. Like, it's not even about attracting, it's just, it will happen to you.
Right.
If you don't give up. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I think now I don't even aim for result anymore, because if I think about results, that is a thing that I cannot think about. If I can just focus on the present and see where life takes me, that's a much better, easier way to live. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that kind of goes into something else I want to talk about, is that what is the conversations that need to continue to happen in regards to the things that you're trying to fight against? What needs to be in the public eye still?
I think, first of all, something that's directly related to our interest in the West is, especially in North America, especially in America, is like the whole trade issue with China. Right now, America is like kind of in a trade war with China. And that's actually, in my opinion, really good for the people in both countries. China has become the factory of the world for the past, 2 decades or so. And that kind of manufacturing, cheap labor and using the resources that's on the land of China has really destroyed the environment has made the people work for like extremely low pay, and a lot of it is slave labor that are made in concentration camps and labor camps with no cost whatsoever, and in really bad environmental and safety standard like environment. And those things are not good for us. And Chinese people don't even trust the quality of things that are made in China. And why would we import all these things that could potentially be poisonous? And it has happened in the past that like toys, tire, like milk formula that are poisonous that are imported from China. It's like, that's not good for us.
Right.
So shop conscientiously and be mindful of these things. I think it's going to be very helpful. I'm not saying like boycott Chinese products because I think that's kind of like not possible. But in the documentary, there is a campaign that I wanted to start. It's called Turn It Over. So it's basically about like you look at where the products are from and you think about the process, the stories, how it's made. If it's made in a labor camp where people are being tortured every day, work for like 20 hours a day, under extremely harsh conditions, and they shouldn't even be there in the first place. They may be just a person who wanted to practice yoga,
right,
or a person who spoke their mind in public, and they ended up there. The resentment, the sadness that goes into the product. How could it possibly be good for us?
It's like a really heavy thing to think about when you're like, yo, where did this product come from, and how many people were hurt in doing so?
Yeah. Would you want like us, we ourselves, or our children to wear clothes or be in touch with things like that? And plus, like some of the inmates I heard, and this is a real story from like the Chinese concentration camp, because they're being beaten up a lot, and there are like people who actually stolen, gangsters or like prostitutes that ended up in labor camps, and because they have so much hate, so they would like sometimes after they've been tortured, their blood, their body fluid, and things that they just like they smudge it on the clothes. This is a true story, and because they're so resentful, and like that's full of hate. If the maker of the product express their hate through the product, why do we want them? Why are we even buying them? To sort of help to facilitate this kind of torture. If a Chinese labor product has no business outside in the West, they'll probably stop making it because there's no market. But precisely because we keep buying them because they're cheap. We first give up our own manufacturing job in the West. The blue-collar workers, the factory workers here will lose their job, and the factory will close down, and their mom moves to China to be made in such an environment. How is that wise?
It's a heavy thing that we all we all give up sort of, hey, we want to buy it cheap, but then like what went into all of that? It is a heavy thing, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, like I've been trying to buy stuff that are sort of at least claim to be ethically made, right? And I have friends who, like, for example, one of them is called Fashion for Freedom. They really just try to make products that are, like, they know where the source is. And now, even more, I try to get local tailors and, like, bag manufacturers to, like, I order things that are just made for myself. And I feel that's a lot better. It's closer to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, nowadays, aside from the documentary Badass Beauty Queen, what are you working on? What are some projects that you're involved in?
I'm here in New York. There's a TV series I'll be acting in. It's sort of like mostly Asian cast, not all Asian cast because they're two Caucasian lawyers, I think. And it talks about the Chinese immigrants' life here and how they're not completely free from like where they come from, and their business and family in China are being threatened. It's not really just about that, but there is an aspect to it. It's called The Rising Sun. That's TV series, and there are several other projects I'm working on, but mostly I think with the human rights side of things, I want to move it to a more tangible, because I have been traveling around the world talking about human rights issues, different kind of issues, organ harvesting, persecution of minorities in China, even labor camps and all that. But I find the actions that the Western world are willing to take based on ethics and moral is very little. Politicians are not prompting to action because something is the right thing to do. It's like everybody's driven by interest, and that's totally understandable. I'm
Right.
saying no criticism of that, because that's sort of the way that human being operates, unless they find a higher self, which happened to a lot of people, like Mother Teresa. But then the thing is, I don't feel like I should continue to use my energy in such a non-productive manner.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've done my best with the platform I can, and that way of the human rights activism. Now I want to move to something that's substantial. We want to talk about trade. We want to talk about slave labor. We want to pin out those companies who are importing and sourcing product from these really painful places in China. And we want to stop them from coming to our country, these products. So, yeah, that sounds good to me.
How do you feel that you can do it in a more tangible way to where it can be sustainable to yourself and you feel a little bit more satisfied with, the output that you're doing?
I've been writing articles and doing TV interviews on subjects, and I think, well, just watch me, I guess.
So, along with just trying to make things sustainable for yourself, what do you feel like more so the future has in store for you? Where would you like to be in the future in regards to being an actress, activism? Is there anything else outside of those that you would want to be doing also?
Besides being an actress?
Yeah, besides being an actress or, doing any sort of... Yeah, besides being an actress, is there anything else that you would love to, experience or dip your toes in or make a part of your career?
Acting is my dream. Like, not my dream. I feel like dream or passion are two, superficial words for what it means for me. I like craftsmanship.
Okay.
It's interesting how, this research and learning to everything about slave labor sort of made me more interested in traditional craftsmanship. It doesn't even have to be traditional, but things that human beings put their souls and energy to work, into, be it products, art, or something like that.
Okay.
Because that I feel like is in direct contrast with the things that I'm sort of fighting with. Is that what you mean? Or what do I want to do in the future besides...
Yeah, that's, anything like that. If there's anything else that you have, any other interests that you have, that you might want to be a part of in the future, any ideas for projects outside of being an actress that you might want to, do in the future?
Yes, a lot of them. I'm a pianist. I love playing piano.
Okay.
That's a failed project of my mother. She wanted me to be a professional pianist and have a peaceful life. And look how things and
complete opposite.
Yeah. And also, I love sailing. I think if I live in a perfect world, free of any kind of responsibilities, or even so-called moral responsibility I impose on myself, I would love to sail around the world with global ocean race. And I want to take adventures to extreme conditions, far corners of the world. And I just feel like experiencing being a human being first, that is such a privilege. And I have the privilege right now. And I think being through everything and listening to so many sad stories make me realize that there's so much more we can make out of ourselves. And we might not know what that is yet, but explore, don't give up the drive to try to explore and experience. And so I guess I have to find it.
Right. And speaking of privilege, what parts of your life do you feel like you're actually lucky to have? What are some things where you're just like happy that, maybe after all this, really terrible stuff has happened, like this is something that's that silver lining, What's those things where you're like, I'm glad this is me?
Sorry, I apologize on behalf of that New York truck that just was in front of me. I feel actually what's my privilege. I feel like everything that's been given to me and happened to me is a privilege of its own. Even though people may say that, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. Yeah, that's the first response. But I feel like going through everything that I have been through brought me so much closer to myself. And I don't think without those experiences, I would be able to know that the simple fact that the true power exists inside me, not outside. And if without going through all that, if the Chinese government hadn't threatened my father, I think I would still be 29 years old. I'm 29 years old now. Oh my God. Like looking toward the external and trying to find validation from the outside. But when everything, and one moment I really felt like everything was taken away from me. When you cannot seek, you can no longer seek, no matter how hard you try, to get safety or validation from the outside world. The only place you can dig is inside. And like that's basically what happened to me when my father was first threatened, because he's been the support of my life, like emotional support, spiritual support, and he's also my financial support. He was at that time. And now that his business and everything is destroyed, like business is destroyed by the Communist Party. And that was very scary to have that blanket pulled under me and to no longer have any safety net beneath. But it's also a very freeing position, like after going through something like that, you just feel like, actually I'm still fine. I'm still living. I'm still breathing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we as humans are more resilient sometimes than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. Like, as an ancient philosopher, I think it was Confucius said, pardon my colorful language. Shit happens. So that's what I'm trying to imprint in my brain. And I think I'm starting to feel like I'm able to deal with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I often use those two words myself to explain things, because sometimes shit happens. Yeah, thanks for talking to me. It's been very interesting. So thanks for coming on the podcast. Where can people go online to get more information about what you're up to and about the documentary?
Okay, I'm really old, so go on Facebook, and I have a Facebook page. And also, I have you can find my documentary on iTunes or Amazon, and a lot of other platforms, which I don't even use myself, but they are wonderful platforms. And also my website. Yeah.
It's been great talking with you, Anastasia. Good luck with everything. I hope everything in your life turns out great,
Well, thank you so much. It was really nice chatting with you.
So that was my interview with Anastasia Lin. The documentary Badass Beauty Queen is available now. Go to badassbeautyqueen.film for more information about where you can view it or purchase it. And there will be more links in the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com to where you can follow Anastasia Lin online and also get more information about the Badass Beauty Queen, the documentary. So thank you again for listening to the podcast. And just a reminder that if you want to support Fresh is the Word, all you got to do is head over to Patreon at patreon.com/freshastheword. And for as little as $1 a month, you can support Fresh is the Word. And for the $3 a month tier, you'll have access to the Patreon-only podcast episodes where I dig deep into my audio archives for interviews that I've done outside of Fresh is the Word for over the past decade. of interviews that I've used for other publications or that I've never used at all. A lot of stuff in my archives, and I have a lot of good stuff already posted on my Patreon in regards to that. I'm trying to do 5 episodes a month. I usually try to drop them all at the same time. So go to patreon.com/freshastheword and support what you can each month. It'll help out a lot. And you can go and stream Fresh the Word pretty much anywhere that podcasts are streamed. And if you can, please leave a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. And that would definitely help out the show. And if you do leave a rating and review, let me know. You can email me at djkfresh@gmail.com or hit me up on any of my social medias. I'm at kfresh is the word on Twitter and Instagram. And that's probably the best place to hit me up. And also, if you go to facebook.com/groups/fresh is the word, you can join the Fresh is the Word Facebook group, and there's a lot of great discussions and a lot of good stuff that I post in there. So thanks again for listening to Fresh is the Word, and remember, go out there and live life with intensity with a capital 10. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.